Okay, let's start. The fly sheet you have is a working paper. I almost always give my lectures in this way. So much material has to be covered that I give you much more material than I can cover if you wish to pursue it, and hopefully it will be of help to you during your study of this particular topic. What I'm going to cover is just what's on the first page. My whole lecture probably will just be about what's on the first page, so don't let the fly sheet scare you. Okay, what am I supposed to do for you today? I'm supposed to be helping you understand in a different way perhaps than you've understood before, unless you've understood it in this way. What does it mean for life to be tragic? When somebody says life is tragic, or this was very tragic, what do you think that means? What would some of you say? What does it mean when somebody says it's tragic? Could you answer? Terrible. Okay. Come on, give me a few more words so we can get going. Unexpected. Good. Anything else? Okay. Basically, tragic usually has a kind of a negative sense, so the terrible and all of this. And that's partially true, and the unexpected is also partially true. But tragic philosophies of life, and not just tragedy, because a tragedy is simply a play, like Oedipus the king. Look, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you back there on your mobiles, all right? Please forgive me, okay? I hate to interrupt your conversation, but this is unacceptable. When we invite people from outside, I happen to be part of the program, and they come here and they stand here and they see a whole bunch of kindergarten children playing with their mobiles or not coming. Then the AUB gets a bad reputation. Your degree starts to be much, much less. So if, you can laugh about it and ha 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 and all the time, go ahead, do that. But, I'm probably preaching to the converted because it's the people who aren't here I really like to tell. But please don't play with your mobiles here. Leave the room, but don't play with your mobiles. Okay? I'm used to it, but as somebody coming from outside and taking a look at you playing with your mobiles, and you're pretending to be university students at the best university in the Middle East, supposedly, we try to think of that. Put yourself in their place. What kind of an evaluation would they have of the university? This university is your university. You don't want to attend a lecture, leave it, but don't play with your mobile, or go to sleep, but don't snore. All right? But don't play with your mobile. Okay, tragic, primarily, what I'm going to have to try to help you understand, is one of the most attractive views of life amongst philosophers, intellectuals, artists, because it's not just about that life is terrible, or even that life is unexpected. It's more about that I try to do my best. People around me try to do their best, at least some of them. And I don't see any quid pro quo. I don't see any proportionate response. I don't see those who are really trying to do their best being rewarded and being happy. And I tend to, on the contrary, I see those people who are sort of practically doing nothing other than just their own self-interest and getting along in life. I find they seem to be even happier than the others. So the whole question of the so-called problem of evil comes into all of this in philosophy, that if the world is good, if the world is run by goodness, as in Plato, or in a rational, generally speaking, universe, or if it's a monotheistic universe where it's run supposedly by a good God and a merciful and compassionate and loving God, why is it we don't see this quid pro quo? Why is it we don't see that those people who are really doing the best are the happiest and getting the most reward, and the opposite, that those who are not doing it seem to be getting rewarded. playing with their mobiles. Before you came, I tried to just let them know they represent the university. And when we invite somebody here to lecture, I saw last it was John Malloy from the history department, sometimes from outside. They come here and they see people playing around with mobiles. It's for your own sake, don't do that, okay? And after I've asked you and begged you, I could have kissed your foot in asking you. You still go on doing it. I'm really, I'm surprised at how wonderful a person you are. Okay, so this business of reward, who gets rewarded in life? And naturally, as animals, we seek reward, and as developed animals, however you wish to see us as humans, we still, we basically seek reward. The tragic world is those who give us a tragic view of life, like Sophocles and like many people throughout the centuries, right into our own day, and in the 20th century, atheistic existentialism was very much into this kind of a view of life, that life is basically tragic. And Nietzsche, of course, is a big name, and he was very much influenced by his views of Greek tragedy. Well, what's it all about? Why is it attractive? Why isn't it just, as you said before, terrible and sort of negative? Well, that's the secret of, you have to try to see if you can see it in this play. You have to read the play, and you have to discuss it with your teacher, and you have to listen to this lecture a little bit at least, and then try to make up your own mind to see whether that's one of the things you can get in reading this work. Because when you read a work, you can read it in many, many different ways. But something that will connect this work to works throughout. That's the sort of thing I try to do when in this program at CBS. When we're doing something from the ancient world, I try to always let you see how it's still alive. So why is it still alive? Because basically it's a challenge to the human being to be like an Oedipus, or like an Antigone, or like a Prometheus. Prometheus was the legendary Greek hero. He becomes kind of the icon for tragic thinkers. The person who, the character who sneaks into Mount Olympus, the heaven of the gods, where they all relax and enjoy themselves. And they have decided, for whatever reason, that fire is not to be given to mankind. Now, can you think of mankind without fire? So, who gives fire to mankind? Not the gods, but Prometheus. And so this becomes a model for Oedipus. That's one way I'm going to try to help you see it. The tragic human being, or the challenge for you to be tragic, you need two things. One, you need to really believe that there is no reward, there's no good God, that on the contrary, the gods might be like you see them here in Oedipus. We worship you in dread, Zeus. Apollo, what new curse you have for us? And we'll see that in the whole work, the main focus of the work is that Oedipus is driven to kill his father and marry his mother, no matter what he, as a human, with all his limitation, but doing his best, is trying to do. All right? This is his fate. He's going to kill his father and marry his mother. So, when you read the work, try to see if you can follow this kind of a pattern, where everything in the work is pushing him to kill his father and marry his mother, and especially the gods, because when he hears his fate, he's going to kill his father and marry his mother. He goes to Apollo to try to make some sense of this. Apollo, what's going on? And what Apollo sends him as a message is simply, I see a horrible future for you. You're going to, meaning you're going to kill your father, marry your mother. Gives him no help whatsoever. So left on his own in this kind of a horrible situation, he then decides to do what a normal, rational, moral human being does. He's not going to stay around waiting for the day he's going to kill his father and marry his mother. All right? So a human rebels against something that patently seems like injustice and horrible and all this. So that's the first thing he does. Okay? He's using his mind. That's all we have is our reason for that. Okay? So he runs away from home. Running away from home, number one, this is a very horrible thing in this polis society, which hopefully you've been introduced to now through Thucydides and that. Your polis, your community, is the only place you can possibly be fully human. You cannot develop your full humanity if you don't have your own community that you are totally dedicated to improving it, to doing your best inside of it. Okay, this had become the kind of ideal that you have to keep in mind. So basically, he's exiling himself. So That's what Sophocles is giving us. This guy is doing his best at every moment, even when it costs him, even when it's sacrificial. All right? He exiles himself. And he starts to move away. In moving away, he goes to, on the way, he meets a lot of, some powerful person with his bodyguard, motorcycles, Range Rovers, whatever, and he's attacked by the leader of this group. He fights back. Remember, this is a heroic age. He fights back, and he can handle himself. He kills them all, but this is self-defense. One person has to survive because he has to come and tell the story, because remember, this is a story. This is a symbol. Only one person survives, and later on, this is the last person to show up in the play, the second shepherd, or the only eyewitness. What happens now is he goes on into the next polis that he's moving towards, and that happens to be Thebes. At Thebes, he's confronted by a monster, the Sphinx. And the Sphinx has set up a hajiz, a blockade at the entrance of Thebes. No handsome young man, like so many of you here, can come in or out of Thebes if they don't answer this drop quiz. And the drop quiz is, what walks on 4 feet in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 at dusk? And it seems no young man had ever been able to answer this question. So it's a symbol, it's a symbol of a very difficult, intelligent, rational question. Oedipus answers it. What is it? You're all intelligent, even if you're playing with your mobile. All right. Are you still playing with your mobile? I hope I'm wrong. All right. It's a disease, it has become a definite addiction in the world today. Okay. No, I'm not looking up there, by the way, Cornelius. I'm over here. So come on, let's just get along with it. Basically, do any of you know the answer to that? What walks on 4 in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Right? The human being, you and me, all right? Unless you were born as an adult like Athene out of the head of Zeus. But most of us are born in that way. We crawl on 4, and then we stand up on 2, and then when we get older, we walk on 3, the 2 feet and the stick. All right. So he's the only one. So what Sophocles is establishing is that this is the brightest human being, the most rational a human being can be, the most intelligent a human can be, and also the best moral citizen of a polis that you can be. But watch now how the stream goes. He solves the problem of the Sphinx. He enters Thebes. Thebes has just received message from this one shepherd who came back, the one who that their king has been killed. Now, in what they should be doing there, according to the way the universe works and the way society works and all this, is they should leave everything and find and avenge, not revenge, avenge the murder of their king. Well, they don't, and we find out later in the play that the shepherd has come, and when he sees Oedipus there, he's too afraid to say, this is the one who killed him. So he says, well, a group of people, he finds some excuse, something to say. He doesn't give them the truth. So up to now, nobody knows the truth about why the king was murdered and who murdered the king. They elect, this is the model is a model of a democracy. They elect him king to replace the king who was killed. So think also, this is the democracy of Athens. All right. In this context, he is elected king. A good number of years later, the play where we start reading it begins. Another curse has now beset Thebes. The first one was the Sphinx. And he was the only one who read it, because when you answer the question in this order of things, then the monster had to leave. A new plague has hit. What is a plague like? A plague means, in this sense, if you read the first lines, all of human life comes to a grind. It stops. Nothing works anymore properly. No childbirth. No, in the field of agriculture, everywhere, everything is going wrong, and nobody knows why. So make sure you read those first few pages to get a concrete picture of what the situation is. Sophocles goes out of his way to introduce the character in this particular way, that they come to him, they call him the best of men, they acknowledge he's been such a wonderful ruler, and that he's the only one, he's the only one who saved them from the Sphinx. And so Sophocles is letting us know that from the point of view of the people there, not you or me, in other words, we're trying to understand what's happening in the play. His is the best of men. So he now, as a good political ruler, does what a good political ruler is supposed to do. He decides to find out what happens. So in that world, like in many other worlds, where the meaning is different, however, he goes to the gods, first of all. He sends Creon to Apollo to find out what's the problem. Creon comes back and tells him, well, Apollo says your king was killed and it was not revenged, because when something goes wrong in this Homeric balanced universe, all right, you have you need the necessity for retribution. Hubris, hamartia, whatever, especially when something goes against the order, then it must be balanced, because this is a world of balance. It's the world of beauty, is where everything has to be in order. That's the only ultimate, really, value that the cosmos is concerned with. So there needs to be retribution. So what does Apollo, how much information does Apollo give him? Well, a king was killed and he wasn't avenged. So what does Oedipus say? A king was killed? Your king was killed and you didn't avenge him? See, he couldn't believe that. Put yourself in his shoes. In that context, this is not just a shirking of your duty. This is a criminal act when you expose your whole of your community to all the retribution and the punishment and the consequences of the cosmos, of the gods, because you don't do what you're supposed to do at that time. So, okay, now that's in his political mind. He goes to the next source, the prophetic source, calls in the prophet Tirannus, welcomes him on his knees, begs him to please, you know things we don't know. Let us know, what's happening. Your city, the polis that you've come from, is in this horrible mess. So Tirannus says, I'm not going to read it, there's not enough time. It's much more fun reading it, but there's no time. Tirannus says, and he's a blind man, he says, I'm not going to tell you. I know the truth, but it's not, it's going to cause pain. So pain. It's going to cause pain. And had I thought sufficiently, I wouldn't have come. That's what Tirannus tells him. Once again, the political mind is activated. The civil ruler, Creon, the religious ruler, this prophet, they stood by back in the time when their king was assassinated, and both of them didn't do anything about it. And now the one who knows, because he has some contact with the gods, refuses to tell us because of this pain. Wawa, haram. ما بده يتعذب حبيبي يقبرني إن شاء الله يقبر سته. Okay, this is but in the mind of the king, in the mind of Oedipus, that's what it looks like. This looks like a wimp, nothing. Not just a wimp sort of in that sort of a prerogative sense, but someone who has shirked his duty to the polis, to the community. That's so important. All right? Flashback to Prometheus. You're not going to give fire to mankind. I'm going to go get fire, and I know you're going to punish me. All right? So this is the pattern that I'm trying to help you see if you can see it when you read the work. So now the two main leaders of the community, the religious leader and the civil leader, have done nothing because the prophet says it's because he's going to call him pain. He tries to tell him, look, be loyal to the polis of your birth. How can you do that? How can you stand by and do that? He says, no, I won't do it because of pain. So he gets angry. This is Oedipus's problem. He gets angry. Habibi, if he didn't get angry, he'd be even a worse political leader than he was. If you don't get angry at such a moment, then anger is simply your absolute evil or something. He's getting angry, justifiably angry in that context. All right? And so what happens? Now, the prophet, who before wouldn't tell them what happened, you know who you're insulting? Then you know who you are? You're going to kill you, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but, read this. I mean, think of that. Don't. It's not the only way to read it, but this is a way that will help you to sort of put yourself perhaps a little bit more in the shoes of of the play, and not just read, later on symbolisms that could come out of it or meanings, because it's very. I'm going to tell you why it's very important when I finish with that. But then now what happens? So Apollo has refused to help him twice, but in refusing to help him, there's this meanness. There's this what's the word there? There's this sadistic thing in there that he's driving him to where his true father and mother are. By only telling him, I see your horrible fate, and doesn't tell him that your true parents are not here. If he told him that, see, that would help him. On the contrary, by not telling him everything, he's keeping him going on his own rational line, the only line he can go on. Okay? The meanness of it. When Creon says, why didn't we do it? When he asks him, why didn't you do it? Creon tells him, oh, well, we were very busy, and the Sphinx told us to let it go. So once again, the divine world, which Sphinx is part of, is paving the way for him to come to where his true parents are, unknowingly to him. So he winds up now in the city where his true parents are. Unhelped, but on the contrary, driven to get there by Apollo and the Sphinx. Now he's thoroughly convinced, and very understandably in that context, that's what the claim, you may disagree. The claim here is that what else could he think? When the political leader and the religious leader, they don't do anything about it, and they expose the whole of the community, and think humanity today, not just your own little thing. So his conspiracy. Conspiracy. There's a plot. Okay? They're plotted. What happened? King was killed. I arrived. I spoiled their plans. The people elected me. And so they couldn't go on with taking over the rule of this polis. This is how his mind is developing. So now he's thoroughly convinced that his enemies are this prophet whom he can't do anything about because he belongs to the world of the gods, even though he's a human. But Creon. Now that means Creon and the prophet may still be trying to get rid of me. And therefore, to protect the polis and to protect myself, I have to be very careful, and so I should at least do something about Creon. And he wants to, punish Creon for criminal neglect, or whatever you want to call it. Okay? Now comes in the people. The chorus represents the people in a democracy. They come and they tell him, they try to, reason with him, but he has no respect anymore for anybody in this polis. This polis, all of them, have opened themselves up to this horrible plague by not doing anything about the murder of a king. So they come but because it's a democratic world, Sophocles takes pains to show us that in a democracy, the ruler has to be actually in contact with the people. So when you get to that point in the text, please note that he tells them, his answer to them, I am thoroughly convinced that this is going to cost me my life. But if that's what you want, I will do it. Ever met a democratic leader who would do that? See, these are models. This is a symbol of, this guy is the best that you could possibly be as a human. So we're getting the best of humans. And so he continues to investigate in the best possible way. He calls in for eyewitnesses. He calls in, he speaks to his wife. The wife whom he doesn't know is his mother. In the contact with his wife, the wife, of course, still doesn't know that Oedipus is her son. But when in talking with him and trying to convince him, look, stop worrying, don't worry, don't believe these prophets, don't believe this, that, blah, 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 she suddenly realizes from what he says, he's opening up his heart to her about what's happening and exactly what happened and all of this. Eureka, E equals MC squared. This is my son. And my children are his children. All right? See, this is a drama. This is a play. And it doesn't. The impact of it does not come across just by reading and analyzing. It's material for that, and all kinds of theories can come out of it. But the play itself has to speak also for you. And that's what I'm trying to do for you, have the play speak for itself. When she discovers that he's a son, does she give a damn about the plague? Does she care about the polis? Does she care about truth? Does she care about anything? I'm going to be shamed. All right, so no, forget about it. Forget about it. Don't follow it up. Blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, listen to me. It's the best. In this translation, he says, this best of yours, I don't give a damn about. Forgive my language, right? I don't care about it. All right? I don't care about your best. Your best is many degrees lower than what is even good. So he continues the search. Nothing's going to stop him from seeking the truth. Nothing's going to stop him from using his reason to try to solve the plague as a political leader. The two things, the search for truth and the love of the polis, the concern for the polis. The word love is the responsibility for the polis. These are the two things that are driving Oedipus. And he goes on, and he brings in the last two people who can speak about it. What's discovered is the first shepherd comes and says, well, your parents here, when they heard Apollo's prophecy, and then they had you as a baby, they gave the baby to me to take him up to Mount Kithaeron and expose him, let the baby die. The shepherd had more heart than the parents. He didn't want to expose him, so he gives him to his friend, another shepherd, the shepherd from Corinth. That's where Oedipus thought his parents were. And he says, look, the king and queen of Corinth would love to have a child. They're childless. So he takes the baby to them, not telling them what this was. Just says, look, I found this baby, and I'm protecting it, and maybe you'd like to adopt it. And they adopt it. So everybody is in the dark. This is part of the unexpected, and that happens in tragedy. Everything is in the dark. There's no clarity. There's nothing you can really sink your teeth into intellectually or logically to follow. You're left in the dark to just do your best in the dark. So when he says, well, where is this shepherd then? Bring the shepherd in. I need to know, because this shepherd is the one who took me. He brings the shepherd in, and the shepherd turns out to be the survivor, the eyewitness, all right? And he basically, he forces him to speak. Again, the shepherd doesn't want to speak. And along the line, the people tell him, don't bother with this. Everybody is mediocre in this world. Everybody is only concerned about pain. The only main thing that drives them is to avoid pain and get the most comfort and pleasure and happiness that they can get. The only difference, the only one who represents the human potential to be different is Oedipus, like Antigone in the Antigone, like Prometheus, right? So these are symbols. Our humanity can either be like all these people represented, or it can try to be more like Oedipus, because only Oedipus solves the mystery. When he finds out, finally, that it is he who killed the king, he punishes himself, he exiles himself again, and exile is worse than death. A second time that he's cutting himself off from humanity, all right? And he blinds himself, and he takes responsibility, because the chorus, the people say, oh, how horrible. How could this have happened to such a wonderful man? Never any condemnation in tragedy. Lamentation. How could such a horrible thing happen to such a wonderful man? What God drove you to it? See, this is their view of the gods, the divine. Which of these gods has done this to you? Oh, Zeus, we worship you in dread. Oh, Apollo, what new curse comes to us? This is their view of the gods, the view of the cosmos and the gods. If you forget that, you can't understand what's happening in the play. You can't understand Sophocles, what he's trying to tell us through Oedipus. So, please notice these lines when you're reading the play. What does Oedipus respond? He says, it was Apollo, but it was my own hand. He takes responsibility. You see, and that's one of the dominant themes throughout all of this, that take responsibility as a human. Do your best as a human. Seek truth as a human. Seek excellence as a human. Your worst enemy is not pain and suffering. It's being mediocre. It's being a traitor. It's being somebody who doesn't care about anything other than themselves. This message flows through there. This is the Prometheus icon. This is the Oedipus, the Antigone. And this is the stuff of all. This was, if you ever take Nietzsche and ever into 04, that's one very important part of Nietzsche, that he was sort of sick. One of the things that was driving him, because he's a very complex man, was that he was seeing the mediocrity of people in his European Christian highest point of civilization thing, and he's finding them all they care about is making more money. You know, the capitalist system was in there, and being profit and happiness and avoiding pain. So he said, you make me you make me sick. And so he comes up, his response, of course, is God is dead, but what that means in Nietzsche is the tragic point. If the gods are not good for you, if there's no God, that doesn't, forget that. Think about what you should be doing as a human. As a human, you should be like a Prometheus. You should be like an Oedipus. You should be working in a master way and not a slave way. You should be trying to really have evolution, really have humanity go forward. He says, when I look at the condition of humanity, I see the survival of the unfittest, not the fittest. To be fittest, you've got to be, you've got to suffer. Suffering isn't my main enemy. It's mediocrity that's my main enemy. So this thread of this tragic understanding of life is a very rich thread. And that's what I didn't want you to sort of just be doing a work on one play, and you can do that better in a literature course or somewhere else. But in this kind of a course, we try to open you up to trends, ways of thinking, things that then influence many, many people throughout up to the centuries, right up to our day, still living. So my claim in this particular lecture is that if you want to get into this tragic stuff, you need to understand two things. You understand the three things that are on this first sheet. The cosmos, the universe, the gods, the ultimate powers that be in the universe, what's affecting the universe mostly. Don't take it for granted and then interpret any play throughout history according to your view. You have to take the view that was operative at the time and in the text. All right? The gods are not friendly. They're not there just to help you. They're just part of the universe, and they do what they do. The only one who's concerned for humans are humans. All right? And therefore you have whatever you believe about the cosmos, in other words, the universal message is stop blaming it on somebody, on the gods or on your environment or something else. Take responsibility. Look at these people. Look at the responsibility that Prometheus took. Look at the responsibility that I'm showing you, Sophocles is telling you through Oedipus. Look at the responsibility of an Antigone. Whatever you read, look at the responsibility that was the heart of Nietzsche. He was trying to get them to be responsible. He says, if God is dead, then you have to be God. You have to sacrifice. You have to give. You have to shape things up. If the God is dead, this is no excuse for you to just sort of do whatever you like. It's a responsibility. So the whole notion of responsibility is extremely important. When you come to Plato in rationalism, you'll see the same notion in Plato's cave and the philosopher. When enlightenment, the philosopher represents not a philosopher of today. The philosopher means the heights of the enlightenment and the development of a human mind. Well, that mind is not developed in the cave. Notice that when you're reading that play, until that philosopher realizes that he has responsibility for the polis. And so the end of the cave story, after there's been the enlightenment, coming out of darkness and ignorance and all that, to the enlightenment, he has to go back down, all right? It's his mind that will force him. Otherwise, he's not enlightened. So when you read the cave story in Plato notice the same theme. Responsibility seems to be something that we are burdened with. And in the 20th century, there's a lot of literature about how we don't want to be burdened. So we want to be like Tiresias. We want to be, we want to be like all these other things. We don't want freedom. We want somebody to take it over for us, all right? And so this, the tragic line of things is not just simply terrible or unexpected things will happen, and he winds up being the one who killed his father and married his mother, even though he did everything a human being could possibly do. And then you look into it and you say, oh, but it was his anger. Habibi, anger. If you don't get angry as a political leader at this point, there's something wrong with you as a political leader. And so his pride. What pride? When he gives in to the chorus when they want, and he thinks he's going to die at the beginning, when he says, I stay up all night worrying about the whole of all of you. You are worried about yourselves, perhaps, but I am worried about everybody in there. This is not the presentation of a proud man. This is the presentation of our human limitation, our human blindness. The only pride he has, and it's a blind pride, it's not sort of the wicked pride, the conscious pride, is he's too overconfident in the power of human reason. And how can you blame him? He had nothing else to operate, no other help. But what the message of the tragedian is that human reason is wonderful. You have nothing other than that to use it. Use it, you'll help yourself, you'll give dignity to yourself, you'll help the polis. but don't expect to be rewarded, because the cosmos is not built in that way. It's not concerned with human justice. It's concerned only with cosmic justice. And cosmic justice will include things that you have to do as a human being, but in terms of your motivation, your heart, your true spirit, your being as a human, nobody cares other than other humans. So the view of the cosmos is extremely important in understanding what he's trying to tell us about what Oedipus represents as the human being who really takes responsibility. If he's a ruler, takes that kind of responsibility. If he's a student, takes that kind of responsibility. If he's a whatever he is, if he's a garbage collector, he takes that kind of responsibility. Responsibility is the heart of this particular play, one of the main things that are being presented through the character of how this man rationally, because it's rational, it's not just a religious duty or because he's going to go to heaven or something like that. The focus is now on reason. It's simply a rational duty for you to take responsibility for whatever it is that you are given. So the whole question of is he free or is he determined, that's a game for philosophers to play. He's a human, and a human is always both determined and free. Or you don't have a human, all right? You have a God if he's not determined, and if you have a slave and if he's not free. So what is that freedom? What is that determinism? That, of course, is really the stuff of what people need to be taking a look at carefully, not just taking one position or the other, freedom or free will or determinism. These great thinkers and all through have always seen that you can't separate these two things, right? Freedom will make sure that you are going to have to deal with your determinism, and your determinism will shape your freedom. And if your determinism is that you're going to kill your father and marry your mother, then your best freedom is to rebel, run away, try to do something about it. All right? So you always have freedom, but you always have a free will. You have free choice, freedom. But freedom as such usually comes to mean that you can decide your fate in some way. You have something to do with the decision in your fate. So that type of freedom is not available in a tragic world. You have to simply accept that. That's the negative part. You have to accept, if you're a believer in this stream, that nobody cares for you. The universe is absurd in the 20th century. It's deaf to you. No one really understands you except for yourself when you get to the absurd in the 20th century. It's this whole package is the basic stuff of the first thing is be realistic. If you're not realistic, you won't use your mind the way it can do. You won't know its limitations or its potential. All right, be realistic. But don't be pessimistic. Don't be a defeatist. All right? You conquer this cosmos in this tragic view, you see. The human who does what they're supposed to do conquers this evil force, which is the cosmos and the gods in it, from a tragic point of view. Plato's going to come around and he's going to agree with number 2 and number 3 on my sheet. The concern for the polis, the concern for truth, the concern to always do what you have with truth. That's what balance is best. Balance means do your best with what you have. All right, the best. Okay, but Plato is going to, and Socrates and Plato and that stream which we're coming to, the second part of 201, is going to argue primarily that the view of the cosmos is wrong. The view of the gods is wrong. Plato is going to claim that no, if you use reason properly and you change the education system and you change the institutions, then we shouldn't give up. We should continue to use our minds to try to find what's the best way we can structure society, the polis. Because if we can restructure the polis in the best possible way, he's primarily a political reformer when you get to Plato. All right? If we can just restructure the human community in the most rational of ways, and that's going to take a lot of time to find out how it is. He gives you the first shot at it in the Republic. But he's stimulating you to go on to think about it. Maybe you can find a better one than he thinks. But it has to come on rational grounds, not on power grounds, on inheritance grounds, on anything like that. The society should be run, the education system should be there to help each human being discover what they're best made of, because he believed we were made of different things, with different natures. Right? And if we can just discover what we really can do best, because that's the point, the rest is just detail. If we can just discover what we can do best, and then want to do what we can do best, then those who are artists, those who are businessmen, those who are agriculture people, all that, they can see we can do this best. Let's do it. because they have a consciousness of the whole, of the polis. Let's do it because that'll help the whole be better. Those are really fit to be the guardians and ready to give their life and courage and all this and to defend. They should be the defenders in your society. And those who rule should be the ones who don't want to rule. You see? Rulers should be those who don't want to rule. All right? See, this is a rational model that Plato's going to be giving you, but that's how he answers the tragic. He's not disagreeing with how you should live your life, the way Oedipus was living it, but you should be enlightened to realize that what Sophocles was thinking the world is like, don't believe that. That's wrong. The world can be changed if you just learn to use your reason properly, knowing its limits and using it properly, and recognizing your own limits and what you can do best in a whole, in a polis. So that's the fun of us. One of the main fun in 201 that I find. You may find different things. Your teachers may not want to go in that way because there are many ways of doing 201. But I'm just throwing it out to you so that at some point you may want to look at what you're doing in 201 in terms of sort of a basic views of what life's all about. I'm packaging it and how people get us to start to think. In the tragic world, people then think, go on. They don't just repeat what Sophocles does. They then, they build on it and they put it into their own context and all of that. And similarly, what Socrates and Plato gave us, people don't just imitate them and repeat what they did, but they're stimulated by what they were saying to seek what might be a better way, rationally, of looking at things. So those three things then, the cosmos, the polis, and so the gods, human society, the individual human. Apollo, not the Apollo of this particular play, what new curse you have for us, and who drives him to killing his father and marrying his mother, in a sense, doesn't help him at all because fate has to take place. And Apollo and the gods are simply the guardians of fate, not guardians of the human necessarily. So Apollo then comes to have, in Athens of this time, two sayings on the temple of Apollo at Delphi. Know thyself, which is translated into know thyself and balance is best. Now, as you understand what know thyself and balance is best, how it's packaged and dealt with in the Greek world, in their tragedy and in their philosophies, know thyself is what Oedipus was doing. He was seeking the truth about his own identity all the way through, all right? Never stopping, no matter what it was going to cost him. He wants to find out who he really is. And it costs him his life because everybody tells him, stop looking. The prophet tells him, stop looking. Save yourself. To hell with the polis. To hell with anybody else. Save yourself. He insists on the truth is the higher value here than just pain and suffering. But you have to suffer for the truth. And balance is best comes to mean whatever you have to do, whatever you are doing it in the best way. And Aristotle will package it in this way to help you understand what is the meaning of balance is best. Think about moral virtues, courage. Okay, well, what is courage as you start to think about it and as these people think about it? Courage is what is learning what you should fear, using your mind to see what you should fear and what you should not fear. So courage is not being fearless. If you're fearless, there's a question about your humanity. The point is this fear that you have, all right, has to be dealt with by your mind. And so your mind will tell you, is this rational for you to be afraid of it? If it's not rational, then you know that this fear is not in its place. Have confidence and do what you have to do, and you'll find that, that's the courage is doing that which might cost you, which might cause you pain, but your mind is telling you, there's no reason for me to be fearing here and shirking my duty. I'm going to go ahead and do it, even if it's going to cost me. Cowardice is the opposite. In cowardice, the fear is not compensated by confidence. The fear has overwhelmed us, and we become cowards. So courage, cowardice, but then what's the other extreme? If you really think that you have no fear, you will do stupid things. You'll do reckless things. Jump off this balcony and show me what a man you are, all right? They're talking rationally here. Right? Even Sophocles was not a rationalist. It has a very clear rational trend within what's happening there. So being rational is human. How to be rational in a tragic way, rational in a rationalistic way, All right? There are many ways of being rational. Just to be rational simply means you're using your mind in the proper way that people have come to understand this is the right way to use reason. But what you come to, the conclusion you come to is a factor of your life and your experience and everything you know about life. And then you bring in the existential aspect of truth into the rationalistic aspect of truth, and you get your own conviction. Life is tragic, but then take the consequences and live it in this heroic way. All right? If you believe it's rationalistic, then do what you can to reform yourself, reform society, reform the education system, reform the institutions. So those three things are the heart of it all. On the rest of the pages, it's kind of a development of the whole argument that I've been giving you the heart of in this one. And on the very last page, there are some items. I know you're too good to me. You're not being restless. And I have 2 more minutes. Okay. Usually people start getting restless 10 minutes before. I have 2 more minutes with you. Thank you for hanging in there. On the very last page, there's a kind of a summary, because the title of it is on the other page, conclusion. It's, for it to fit onto this page. Read through those things there and see. That's the kind of a summary of main points that you would want to see if you can understand what's being said there. The last thing there are further reflections on what is tragic. Comic and tragic have many, many different meanings. Comic, philosophically, comes to mean, comedy comes to mean, your view of life is optimistic. There may be lots of suffering and all that, but if you do what you're supposed to do, the end will be good. You can do something. In tragedy, the difference in tragedy is do your best. That's all you can do. You must do that just for yourself and for everybody. But there is no hope for something like that. There's no hope. In comedy, there's hope. So comedy doesn't just mean ha 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 and laughing and all that. There's a whole spectrum of what is comedy. All right. In the the most serious forms of comedy, when you call something a comedy, philosophically, it means that it tells you life ultimately has hope. And so there's no hope and there's no despair in tragedy. That's what makes it difficult. There's no real hope in terms of a future, but there's no despair because there's lots of meaning to be had in this life if you live it in the right way. So despair is to not see how much potential there is in life. And so basically the word dignity there and grandeur maybe is one thing that might help you to see it. And let me just show you one thing, those who want to stay. I'm sorry. All right. Prometheus there in the middle. Okay? Prometheus is a symbol of grandeur. And that's what tragedy, why people who like tragedy. A tragic vision is a vision of human grandeur, human dignity. You can be, the benefactor of mankind. Okay? So this aspect can fit into any worldview. You don't have to finally accept it fully. But the notion that dignity in itself, grandeur in itself, doing your best in itself, gives you dignity, helps humanity, that in itself is plenty of meaning in life if you're seeking meaning. So don't let your view of the gods or the cosmos, whatever you believe, don't think that's the only thing that's important in life. And that's the tragic vision, because it seems so negative, it seems so terrible, it seems like, there's all that. That's the realistic aspect of tragedy, supposedly from a tragic point of view. But the human part, the challenge, the grandeur, the dignity, the meaning of life lies in watching and seeing what Oedipus did. Read Antigone and see how Antigone follows the same kind of pattern in that play. Okay, thank you very much. And remember, my warmest regards to all your friends who didn't show up to this. There should be 100.